The Higher Education Loans Board, a bill from the National Assembly, a bill by Honorable John Muregi, is also another bill that the House will be debating this morning. The Information and Communication Technology Practitioners Bill, a bill by nominated MP Godfrey Osotsi, Bill number 38 of 2020, is also another bill that members of Parliament will be discussing and deliberating on this morning. The National Construction Authority, a bill by Nakuru Town Member of Parliament, Honorable David Gikaria, is a bill at the second stage. The Children's Amendment Bill, Bill number 46 of 2020, and the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, an amendment bill, Bill number 1 of 2021, by Nandi Hills Member of Parliament, Honorable Alfred Ketal, is also a bill that members will be making input during this morning sitting. Finally, the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, an amendment bill by Butere Member of Parliament Tindi Mwale, is a bill that has also been lined up for debate during this morning session. And so is the Whistleblowers Protection Bill, Bill number 50 of 2021 by Honorable Irene Kasalu. Pursuant to Standing Orders number 42A, subsection 5, 4 members of Parliament will be fielding questions for reply before the various departmental committees. And taking the lead is Honorable Member for Jomvu, Honorable Badi Twalib, who will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Physical Planning that could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Mr. Salem Said, a resident of Maganda village in Miritini Ward in Jovu constituency, is yet to be compensated for the land compulsorily acquired by the government on the 6th of June, year 2015. And this was to pave way for the construction of the standard gauge railway, despite the land having been valued and an award letter of 664 million shillings issued. The member for Jomvu will equally be seeking to understand what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that Mr. Salim receive compensation, and could the Cabinet Secretary also provide the timelines for the payment. And finally, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the payment is made promptly, considering that there have been numerous similar cases in Maganda village and across the country which have been delayed. Questions by Honourable Member for Jomvu will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Lands and Physical Planning. His counterpart from Magarini, Honorable Michael Kingi, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that food harvested at the Gelana Kulanu farm directly benefits local communities as part of the farm corporate social responsibility. And considering the current severe drought being experienced in Magarini constituency, which has led to, among other things, school-going children dropping out of school, could the ministry consider commencing a feeding program for schools in the constituency using produce from the Gelana Kulalu farm? Questions by Honourable Member for Magarini, Honourable Michael Kingi, will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Agriculture and Livestock. Member for Usoga, Alego Usonga, Honorable Samuel Atandi, will be asking the Teacher Service Commission to explain why Mr. Ruben Omondi, a former teacher at Madede Primary School in Alego Usonga, was irregularly dismissed from the service. Questions by Honorable MP for Alego Usonga will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Education. Honorable Moses Cheboy, the chamber, signaling that the business of the House is starting now. I'm now handing you over for the live broadcast. Enjoy your viewing. Good morning.
Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Tutakusii tutazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako, ambayo umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri 19. Okay. Other members, we are short of the required numbers. Therefore, I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
The Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Chiboi, currently presiding over the business of the House this morning, has directed that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes. And this is to allow for more members to access the chamber to allow the House to transact business this morning. There being a full entry for members during this particular session, where a couple of bills have been lined up for debate. In the highlights in the order of business this morning, the MP for Alego Usonga, Samuel Atandi, besides asking the Cabinet Secretary, or rather the Teacher Service Commission, about the payment of a former teacher at Madede Primary School, will also be asking the TSC to explain why it is yes to reinstate Mr. Owino to the service, even after the Magistrate Court, sitting in Siaya, acquitted him on the 29th of June, the year being 2018, for the accusations by the Teacher Service Commission on the basis of lack of evidence. Could the Cabinet Secretary also provide timelines when the Commission will reinstate Mr. Owino back to the service? And finally, could the Commission avail measures that TSC has put in place to ensure that Mr. Ruben Omondi Owino is paid all the accrued remunerations? This is from March 2018, when he was irregularly interdicted from the service. Questions by Honorable Sam Watandi, member for Alego Songa, will be replied by the Chairperson, Teacher Service Commission. Member for Northimenti, Honorable Rahim Dawood, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury and Matters Planning to explain why Mr. Augustine Mugwika, a retired teacher and a resident of Northimenti constituency, has not been paid his pension dues for the months of January to May, the year 2020, and March 2021. Honorable Rahim Dawood will also be seeking to understand what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure that Mr. Augustine Mugwika is paid his dues, and this is including interest, if any. His questions will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Finance and National Planning. Member for Butere, Honorable Tindi Mwale. The House will be debating his bill this morning. And further bills to be deliberated by the House this morning is the Health Amendment Bill, a bill by Honorable Alice Wahome, Bill number 28 of 2020. The Institute of Social Workers Professional Bill, a bill by Honorable Joshua Kimilu, is a bill at the second stage. The Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2020, is also a bill that the House will be deliberating on this morning, and the bill is by Honorable Richard Tongi. Honorable Danson Mwakwona, who has sponsored the bill on the Alcoholics Control Bill, Bill number 35 of 2020, is also another bill that will be debated by the House this morning. A key in the highlights this morning is a bill by Nambale Member of Parliament, Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi, that seeks to establish the Debt Management Authority Bill, the Debt Management Authority. And the House will, for 2 hours this morning, be debating that particular bill. And in the event the House passes that particular bill, the National Treasury's Public Debt Management Authority will then be replaced should the MPs enact that particular law, establishing a semi-autonomous authority to manage public debt. The bill by Nambale Member of Parliament seeks to establish the authority to implement the government's borrowing policy and minimize matters' cost. The bill also provides that the authority will maintain a register of all loans advanced to the national as well as to the county governments. The Debt Management Authority, according to the proposals in the bill, is that it will be managed by a board comprising of a chairperson appointed by the President, Treasury Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, the Central Bank of Kenya, and the CEOs of the Capital Markets Authority, the National Security Exchange. Also, the Accountants Organization, ICPAK, the Kenya's Bankers Association, Kenya Private Association, as well as the Law Society of Kenya, will also nominate each person to sit at the board. According to further proposals in the bill, is that the authority will also assist county governments in managing their debt and will be run by a Director General appointed by the board. The bill further seeks to regulate reckless borrowing by the state, and this is owing to the trillion of shillings in the public debt at the moment. The House will equally be debating a couple of bills from the Senate. And just to mention a few is the coffee bill by the Chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters of Agriculture
we still don't
and
have
Livestock.
the numbers, so I proceed to add 5 minutes as per our standing orders. We are allowed to do that. So 5 minutes it is. See if we could raise the numbers.
The House is yet to get to at least 50 members to allow for it to transact business this morning. And the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Moses Cheboy, has further added 5 minutes, and this is pursuant to Standing Orders of the House number 35. And the additional 5 minutes will allow more members to make their ways into the chamber and make their input in regards to the business of the House this morning. The Criminal Procedure Code Amendment Bill number 41 of 2020 by Honorable Nelson Koech is also another bill lined up for debate before the floor this morning. According to Standing Order number 34 on the quorum at the commencement of the House, subsection 2 is that if there's no quorum present when the chair is taken, a time will be appointed, which has already been appointed, 10 minutes, immediately after saying the prayer, and a further additional 5 minutes will be given upon the expiry of 10 minutes. And if upon the lapsing of the 5 minutes, there's still no quorum present, then the Speaker shall adjourn the House forthwith and to the next sitting. And so you are waiting to see whether the National Assembly will raise at least 50 members to allow it to transact business this morning, after which, if the House is unable to raise that particular number, which is the requirement pursuant to the guidelines and directives in adherence with matters COVID-19, then the Deputy Speaker will have no other plans other than adjourning the House until afternoon sitting, when the House is again set to sit during today's business. Members of Parliament continue making their way into the chamber to allow the House raise that particular key number to allow it to transact business this morning. The National Government Constituencies Development Fund, a bill by Honourable Tindi Mwale, Bill number 34 of the year 2021, is also another bill that members of Parliament will be debating this morning. The Sexual Offences Amendment Bill, Bill number 24 of 2020 by Honourable Gathoni wa Mushomba, is a bill that members of Parliament will be debating on this morning. The Chief Whip in the National Assembly, who happens to be member for Navaholo, Honourable Emmanuel Wangwe.
Honourable members, we can now start business.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The leader of majority, actually the deputy leader of majority.
Put me on.
Proceed, you have the microphone.
Mr. Speaker, I like, Honorable Speaker, I beg to read the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Wednesday, 23rd of February 23rd, 2022, the morning sitting. 1. The report of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021.
Order, Honourable Sankok. Honourable Sankok. Order, Honourable Sankok. Honourable Sankok.
Send him out.
Take your seat, Honourable Sankok. And, please, don't, I will not allow you to violate social distancing rules under any circumstances. So, Honourable Sankok, you might need to move a little further from your colleagues. Yes, that's better now. Proceed, Honourable.
Back here.
Yes, and any consultation, there is quite some consultation revolving around the member for Nandi Hills. Quite a lot of consultation. Now, do it in low tones. We do not have a problem with consultations, but they should be in reasonable decibels.
I repeat myself. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, morning sitting. 1. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificate therein. Revenue statements of the State Law Office and Department of Justice. B. Revenue statements of the Business Registration Services. C. National Council for Law Reporting. D. State Law Office and the Department of Justice. E. Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Stub Mortgage and the Car Loan Scheme. And F. State Department for Broadcasting and Telecommunications. 2. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2020 and the certificates therein. 1. A. University of Eldoret. B. Ted and Kimathi University of Technology. C. Kenyatta Veterinary Vaccines Production Institution. D. Kenya Sese and Trisomoniasis Trypanosomiasis Eradication Council. E. Bathroom Processing Company of Kenya. F. Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services. And G. Southeastern Kenya University. 3. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2019 and the certificate therein. A. Roresa Water and Sewerage Company Limited. B. Iten Tambach Water and Sewerage Company Limited. C. Lake Basin Development Authority. D. Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. E. Uweru Technical Training Institute for 18 month period ended 30th June 2019. 4. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2020 and the certificate therein. A. Yata. B. Mwala. C. Kinangop. D. Mogosio. E. Baringo Central. F. Sotik. G. Orochoro Rock. And the H. Bomet Central. 5. Report of the Auditor General and financial statements of Rongai constituency for the year ended 30th June 2019 and the certificate therein. 6. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements respective of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificate therein. A. Moibeni Technical and Vocational College. B. Hamed Shahame Mwadani Technical Training Institute. C. Mulaga Technical Training Institute. D. Orolaisa Water and Sewage Company Limited. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I put this there.
Very well. So we go to the next order. No, we have the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation.
How about the I see us being a finger by anyway, guy.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, we will sort out the issues of approval later. So, but is he in here?
Put off this. This mic. Put it off.
Well, I'm sure she would be absent, so we can let it for another, maybe tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon, not today. We might not get her. Oh, the Vice Chair, you wanted to say something on it?
Thank you.
But sorry, let's confirm first. Just a minute. All right, proceed if you can.
Thank you, Speaker.
Is that
This is a member of Boni, Erastus Kivasu Nzioka.
I see it's Honorable Kivasu as a member of the committee, because you are not the Vice Chair.
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. The following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, morning sitting. Report of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation on its consideration of the Copyright Amendment Bill 2021, National Assembly Bill number 44 of 2021. Thank you, Speaker.
Right. We then go to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
All right. Under this particular order, there are two segments. One is the matters of questions, and the second one is statements. Now, on the first segment, the question by the member for Alego Usonga, and that by the member for North Imenti, the Honorable Abdul Rahim Dawood, are both deferred on their own request, which I accept. So they are deferred. So we will go to the questions for the member for Jomvu, Honorable Twalib. Give him the mic. Honorable Twalib. Just be patient, Honorable Twalib. You are being, your mic issue is being sorted. Yeah, you have it now next to you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 15 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Physical Planning. Question number 1, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Mr. Salim Said of ID number 225-4872, a resident of Maganda Village in Meritini Ward in Yomvu constituency, is yet to be compensated for his land
You have it. You have the mic.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I will start it again. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 15 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Physical Planning. Question number 1, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Mr. Salim Said of ID number 225-4872, a resident of Maganda Village in Meritini Ward in Yomvu constituency, is yet to be compensated for his land compulsorily acquired by the government on 6th of June 2015 to pave way for the construction of the standard gauge railway, despite the land having been valued and an award letter for a total of 664,125 issued. Question number 2, Mr. Speaker, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that Mr. Salim Said receives the compensation, and could the Cabinet Secretary provide the timelines for the payment? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the payment will be prompt, considering the numerous similar cases in Maganda Village and across the country which have been delayed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Lands. Next is a member for Magarini, the Honorable Kingi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 48 of 2022, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. 1. What measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that food harvested at Galana Kulalu farm directly benefits local community as part of the farm's corporate social responsibility? 2. Considering the current severe drought being experienced in Magarini constituency, which has led to, among other things, school-going children dropping out of school, could the ministry consider commencing a feeding program for schools in the constituency using produce from the Galana Kulalu farm? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. So we go to statement requests, and I see there are 2. We will start with the request. Is the committee chair on finance, national planning in the House and prepared? Oh, yes. So let's have the Honorable Mbogo. Never mind the fact that probably the chair or the vice chair of that particular committee on finance are absent, but the record will do the necessary and have them informed that they need to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to seek for a statement, Honorable Speaker. Pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning regarding compensation of 128 oil marketing companies by the government. Honorable Speaker, since November 2021, 128 oil marketing companies have not been paid their dues due to the tune of Kenya shillings 38 billion by the National Treasury. The matter came about due to the increased fuel prices by the government that were experienced mid-last year. Whereas the government intervened and took to cushion the consumers by subsidizing the increased pump prices. The said unpaid dues has put a lot of strain to the oil marketing companies who had borrowed loans from the banks, and the situation has worsened even further due to high interest rates being charged on the borrowed loans. Honorable Speaker, since the introduction of VAT to fuel products, oil marketing companies are required to remit VAT to KRA once an invoice is raised. To date, the said invoices raised to the National Treasury have not been paid, yet VAT has to be remitted to KRA without delays. It is notably that 123 out of the 128 oil marketing companies, Mr. Speaker, are Kenyan-owned, and their collapse would be a detriment to many Kenyans currently employed by those companies. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the following. When will the ministry pay the Kenya shilling 38 billion to the said oil marketing companies? 2, could the Kenya Revenue Authority consider suspending the collection of VAT from the oil marketing companies until they are paid their dues? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, what long-term plans does the ministry have to aid in cushioning the public from the high fuel prices? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one is referred to the Committee on Finance and National Planning. Then we go to the member for Endebess, Honorable Dr. Pukose Robert.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2c, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Energy regarding suspension of Kenya Power staff under unclear circumstances. Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, the Kenya Power Board of Management has suspended several officers under obscure circumstances. For instance, in November 2021, the board suspended 59 supply chain staff ostensibly to pave way for a forensic audit and review of the supply chain function. Further, in December 2021, the board also sent home 5 general managers on a 60 days compulsory leave in what it claimed was a move to facilitate forensic audit and conclusion of the review of the supply chain operations, which entails lifestyle audits of the said suspended staff, among others. Honorable Speaker, in addition, following the collapse of the transmission towers on Kiumbere Embakasi high voltage transmission line on 11th January 2022, which resulted in a countrywide blackout, the implicated staff were summoned by the Directorate of Criminal Investigation to record statements on alleged cases of negligence and sabotage involving the collapse of the transmission towers. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Energy. In the statement, the chairperson should address the following. 1. What are the specific reasons for the suspension of the said officers, and confirm that the suspension was carried in accordance with the employment and labor laws? 2. Could the chairperson provide a status report regarding the ongoing review of the supply chain function and forensic audits, which necessitated compulsory leave and suspension of the said staff? 3. Could the chairperson provide information on the team undertaking the lifestyle audit or vetting exercise of the said suspended staff, including their qualifications, and explain the procedure used to audit or vet them to ensure that the process is done in an open and transparent way? 4. Could the chairperson avail details on the recent changes in the company's top management, if any? Lastly, which is 5, could the chairperson state measures put in place by the board and the ministry to ensure that staff have a conducive working environment free from threats and intimidation occasioned by the suspensions and the ongoing investigations by the Directorate of Criminal Investigation? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That is referred to the relevant departmental committee, which is the Departmental Committee on Energy. Now we go to the next order. What is it, Honorable Keter?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the... Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek your indulgence on a matter that was raised on more than 14 days 2 weeks ago by Honorable Francis Kimani Kuria, the Member of Parliament for Molo constituency, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2. He rose to seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock regarding the current high cost of fertilizer in the country. Mr. Speaker, it is against that background that I want to seek your indulgence, and more importantly, the response from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock, because this is a very emotive issue. At the moment, the rainy season has started. Farmers are preparing to get to the farms. Currently, the prices are more than 6,000 per bag of fertilizer, which is very, very expensive. And considering that it is already, the production of most agricultural products is already very expensive, Mr. Speaker, and this will increase further the cost of production, meaning it will cost farmers a lot in terms of the cost of production, and it will affect food productivity. And I know one of the big four is food security. Mr. Speaker, I want to seek your directions and indulgence on that matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that's fairly straightforward. Well, first of all, it is an extremely critical issue. I can see quite a number of members are putting their intervention slots here. But before I give the chair, Departmental Committee on Agriculture, Honorable Tire, whom I see is in the House, I would rather give a few members to ventilate on it because it's a real topical matter. The only problem is I do not know how I'm going to share it out. But if members can speak briefly, we will be able to get many members speaking. So I will start with the Honorable Dr. Wamalwa. Then I pick 2 members from this other side. Then come another. I will give about 7 to 8 members. Yes, and please let's be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to salute Honorable Keter for raising up this matter, and I'm happy the chair of the Committee on Agriculture is on board. Mr. Speaker, this is a critical moment where farmers are preparing their fields to plant, and fertilizer being one of the main inputs, Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, the price per bag is costing about 7,000 Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, is beyond the reach of the majority poor farmers. And the government, being the first line of defense, Mr. Speaker, is supposed to look into this matter. Mr. Speaker, had an opportunity to have looked at the BPS. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there was no provision for the fertilizer because the BPS, Mr. Speaker, provides the key priority areas where the government is supposed to provide budgets. How I wish, Mr. Speaker, as you are in the House today, this is a matter that should be handled with urgency, Mr. Speaker, so there is that provision of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, in the BPS. Mr. Speaker, as the Jubilee government comes to its end, Mr. Speaker, it is indeed important as we prepare this budget. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is mainly going to be for the new government. It's only God who knows which one is going to be the new government.
No,
but on matters of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, it cuts across.
Fertilizer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm talking about the BPS.
So that I give a few more members.
Exactly. So, Mr. Speaker, how I wish that we could move with speed, even if it's going to be in a supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, that this fertilizer can be provided for the farmers as quick as possible. Because as we speak, Mr. Speaker, it has started raining. And when it starts raining, Mr. Speaker, very soon it will be planting season. So I humbly request the relevant powers that be, Mr. Speaker, to move with speed to provide subsidized fertilizers to the farmers, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Member for Kipkelian West, then I'll pick quite some members. So Kipkelian West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I'm trying to look at those members, especially from the fertilizer consuming areas. I see the Honorable Kutuny, I see the Honorable Pukose, I see quite a number of members. If you are going to be brief, we are going to be giving quite a few members.
2 minutes. Thank you.
Just a minute each. Honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honorable Keter for raising this urgent and important matter. Mr. Speaker, we live in a very dangerous time in this country where everything that is directed to our farmers is not the priority of this government. This government has money to refurbish stadiums. This government has money to do all the lofty, even including putting up a gun factory, but they don't have money for fertilizer subsidy to our farmers. Mr. Speaker, and we live at a time and under a president who has become so rogue, and is in every other time he appears on TV, he cheats the public. Mr. Speaker, you remember the president once said that the cost of energy will come down. Nothing has happened. He once said that farmers' input on dairy feeds will come down. Nothing happened, Mr. Speaker. And now, even as we address this issue of fertilizer, we have a report
what is your point of order,
Mr. Speaker, there is an addendum removing...
Order.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Actually, I'm surprised, Honourable Wangwe, because I wanted to give you to substantively contribute. So this point of order...
Honourable Speaker, my point of order should not subdue the substantive contribution. But my very good friend, we are debating the issue of fertilizer, but he is bringing in a debate on the president. Is he in order, Honourable Speaker, that Honourable Kosgei debates the president
restrict yourself to the fertilizer issue, the Honorable Member for Bukelion. If there is anything you wanted to say, you've said. So let's go to fertilizer.
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, please finalize.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. We cannot address this issue in isolation, Mr. Speaker, but however, I want to say that there is already an addendum from the Budget Committee removing even what was allocated and requested by the committee for purposes of these fertilizer inputs. And we are saddened that nobody else can remove that, Mr. Speaker, if it is not the rogue state under the president.
Okay, that should be enough. Let's go to the Honorable Kutui. The majority whip, you had a shot on that bit. I'll give you some breathing time. I'll get other members first, then come back to you.
Kongoi missing, Bwana Speaker.
Order.
Yeah.
Order, Honorable Kutui. Parliamentary language. Order.
Okay.
I could not understand the language you just spoke.
Asante Bwana Mwenyekiti. Mwenyekiti, nachukua hii fursa kumshukuru sana Mheshimiwa Keter kwa kuleta hoja hili ndani ya bunge. Hakuna taifa lolote ambalo linaweza kupiga hatua isipozingatia ukulima. Na Waswahili wanasema kila mwamba ngoma huvutia upande wake, lakini nataka kusema wazi kwamba sisi tunaovutia upande huu mwingine. Leo naamka na masikitiko kwa sababu bajeti ilikuwa imetengenezwa na ikawekwa pesa ya kutosha ya kupunguza gharama ya fertilizer ama mbolea. Lakini kwa mkia leo kwamba wizara tena imetuma taarifa nyingine ya kutoa hiyo pesa ambayo ilikuwa imerasibiwa. Mimi ninataka kumuomba mwenyekiti na kamati kwa ujumla waitupilie mbali ombi la serikali kuu ya kuondoa pesa ambayo ilikuwa imetengea kupunguza bei na gharama ya fertilizer ama mbolea. Wakulima wako tayari kwenda mashambani. Wengi wa Wakenya kwa sasa hawana chakula, lakini serikali inazembea, haijaweka mikakati ya kutosha. Kwa hivyo mimi ninataka kuomba serikali kuu, kabla hatujakata kauli ya kutoa msimamo wetu, waweze kutoa taarifa ya jinsi mikakati imewekwa ya kusaidia mkulima ili aweze kupata mbolea kwa bei nafuu. Asante.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the genesis of cartels who want to import maize, beginning with the production, Honorable Speaker. This is a sign that cartels have penetrated treasury. And Honorable Speaker, as the government, we should not support any proposal which is going to bring down our government just because cartels have penetrated treasury. Honorable Speaker, if production is not checked, it means we are going to import maize. And when we import maize, Honorable Speaker, it means at the end of the day, we are going to increase the cost of production and everything is not going to work for the country. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we want to advocate that we bring down, we make sure the amount that was allocated as for the import of fertilizer remains in the budget. We have to support it so that, Honorable Speaker, we don't want to see the cost of fertilizer remaining 7,000 to the farmers. Instead, it has to come down because, Honorable Speaker, that's the only way to support our people. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank Honorable Keter for the efforts of making sure that we have this statement before the Parliament. I also want to thank Honorable Wangwe for accepting that there are cartels in Treasury or in government, especially Treasury. You should actually move forward and name them. Mr. Speaker, we can't wait much longer. Rains are now with us. We require the prices of maize to come down, not today, but like yesterday. Mr. Fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, in most cases I've been on this floor advocating for the interests of CDF. Today I'm here for the farmers, Mr. Speaker, so that the fertilizers can actually come down. If this government can't listen to us, if this government cannot listen to farmers, The supplementary that will be here on Thursday or tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Speaker, I'll make sure I'll convince my colleagues that the whole supplementary budget will go down. Mr. Speaker, it's not a threat. It's a statement I'm issuing before this floor. I'm a farmer too, and I actually want the prices to go down. Mr. Speaker, watch me tomorrow. I have many friends in this floor, Mr. Speaker. I have friends that are also farmers. Member for Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the outcry cuts across the constituencies, cuts across the country. Yesterday I was in a place called Songoloi, and even if you're doing a meeting for bursaries, people are asking, we don't even need you to give us bursaries. We need to farm because we can, but we cannot afford fertilizer. And there is no cartel in this country, Mr. Speaker, that the government cannot demolish. So we hope that this can be done, and we agree and we support Honorable Keter in terms of the need to bring the cost of fertilizer down, and we hope that all these cartels that have been picked by the leadership of the House can be demolished, because the government is the government. So we hope that the addendum will be supported across the parties, regardless of what party one supports, because we cannot lower the food prices when the cost of fertilizer is still unaffordable.
Honorable Sankok, 1 minute. You know, I have to remind you because I know sometimes you speak for too long.
Choose today which side you will be, whether the side of Kenyans or the side of the rogue government that is trampling on Kenyans. Honorable Speaker.
You go to
Speaker,
the issue of fertilizer.
let me think.
Because if you bring other issues, it does not help.
Let me think.
If you genuinely want the issue of farmers, let's not dramatize. Let's deal with the matter of fertilizer. Let's not digress, please. Let's not politicize.
No fertilizer, no reduction of prices of fertilizers, no budget in this House. And I think members will choose where they will be, because Kenyans are watching. Whether you will support our farmers or then you will support the government by passing the budget that does not have money to subsidize the price of fertilizer, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and I thank Honorable Alfred Keter for bringing up this issue, because this issue is very emotive. It is the rainy season. Kenyans are now planting. In Narok, we are the highest producers of barley, second highest producers of wheat, which consume the highest number of bags of fertilizer. And the last time we made a bumper harvest in Narok was when William Ruto was the Minister of Agriculture. And we actually exported our barley all the way to South Africa and Tanzania. That was the first and the last time, Honorable Speaker. Okay. So you can see the effect of lower prices of fertilizer on production, Honorable Speaker. We must reduce the prices of fertilizer, increase production, and reduce the prices of food.
Okay, Honorable Nyikal, Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also take this opportunity to actually appreciate and thank Honorable Keter. Mr. Speaker, there are times when matters of national importance are before us that we should strive to remove politics so that we come together. This is the issue of food for Kenyans. The price of fertilizers should go down. And that is something we support. Honorable Keter has asked for the correct thing. But I'll just tell my colleagues, the best in such circumstances is just leave out politics completely and talk about the issue. We all know that when it comes to politics, logic disappears. So if we then bring a lot of politics, even those who would support actually stop supporting because of politics. So the best approach whenever we have an issue of this nature is to cut politics out, think of Kenyans, and support the idea. I think that we should ensure that the prices of fertilizers come down. Thank you,
Honorable
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Mheshimiwa Alfred Keter for bringing this matter. Mr. Speaker, the critical thing here for us who come from other regions who do not depend on fertilizer is the fuel, prices of fuel. If you can reduce the price of fuel, all the other items or goods will go down, because production of food and services depends on the fuel. So I think we should also address the issue of fuel prices.
Honorable Pukose.
Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. ili kuchangia kwa ile swali ambalo limehusisha Mheshimiwa Keter, ambapo anataka chairman wa agriculture Mheshimiwa Tiren aweze kuleta jibu kwa hii nyumba kuhusu kwa nini bei ya fertilizer imebaki juu. Na nimefurahi Mheshimiwa Wangwe amesema katika serikali hii kuna cartels, na mimi nafikiri Wangwe tu ameonyesha kidole mahali sio sawa. Cartels iko kule State House, na kule ndio tunataka tujue rais lazima ashughulikie kwa ile kipindi imebaki, ahakikishia kwamba bei ya fertilizer imeteremka chini ili Mkenya wa kawaida.
Order. We have said we restrict ourselves to the matter. Let's not throw unnecessary. Please. So if you do that, Honorable Sankok.
Asante
Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok. In fact, it is lucky that I had given you an opportunity. Had you spoken like that, I'd make sure that you don't get one. Because we have to restrict ourselves to the matter that has been raised. Anything that is a sideshow is unnecessary. So please, order Honorable Sankok. Order Honorable Sankok.
So Bwana Speaker, nimeona Mheshimiwa Kutunya amesema sijui nafuta upande gani, na ni mzuri tufute upande ya mkulima, upande ya Mkenya wa kawaida, tuhakikishe kwamba wana chakula ya kutosha. Bwana Speaker, niliona sehemu zingine za Kenya iko na ukame mkali, na tulikuwa tunaona hata watu hawana chakula. Yet sisi kama kaunti ya Trans Nzoia baada hata tuko na mahindi katika kwenye stores. So tungependa serikali iangalie kwamba mkulima anapata afueni kwa mambo ya fertilizer. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Honorable Ashiali and the Honorable Chair, the Departmental Committee, I'll give two from this side. But let's have Honorable Ashiali, then I give two here, and then we come back to the Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
It's something that we must wind down.
Honorable Speaker, those of us who live near the Ugandan border, we are really embarrassed that foodstuffs are cheaper in our neighboring country, in Uganda, and yet foodstuffs in Kenya are very expensive. Honorable Speaker, the reason why when you go home to campaign and you find so many young fellas who are actually supposed to be in farms doing something to produce food is because today it's uneconomical to do agriculture, because the prices of fuel that will run tractors is expensive, the cost of fertilizer is expensive, and therefore the young men who should be doing agriculture have decided to now hang around so that they can get 1 or 2 shillings from politicians. Honorable Speaker, I am embarrassed that I put this government in place. I contributed to the formation of this government, and I am embarrassed. I am highly embarrassed, and how I wish that the 5 months remaining end as soon as possible.
The Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I must thank Honorable Keter for bringing up this matter, because, Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Nikala said, the issue of increased fertilizer prices does not know which political formation you support or which side of the political divide you are. It is affecting all of us. It is affecting the people we represent here. So if you try and politicize such an important issue and try to gain political mileage out of it, I think that's very unfortunate. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I brought a question to this House about 6 months ago on the issue of fertilizer and on the issue of procurement malpractices of
Okay, so order. Honorable Kavai Adagala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to congratulate Honorable Ketel. This is timely, and this is the time farmers are preparing to plant their the maize and other foodstuffs. I think this is quite in order, Mr. Speaker, sir. The farmers down there are hurt. Some are still having maize in the stores, and others are preparing land ready for planting season. The rains are here with us. I was in the village the other day, and it is raining heavily down there. So I support this. Prices of fertilizer should be reduced to enable farmers prepare their land quite on good time and plant. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this. Prices of fertilizer should come down, and even the seedlings for farmers to plant.
Okay. So the chair, agriculture, there are things I would like, that would be only proper for you to do. No more. We have order, members. Let's first hear from the chair, agriculture, what he has to say about when he's able to respond to the original statement by the member for Molo. Because what Honorable Keter has done is reignite a statement that had been requested before. What is the status? And then you can proceed and make your statement.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Honorable Keter, my brother, Honorable Keter, MP Nandi Hills, for the question that he has raised today. And I think also I would want to mention that it had been raised by Honorable Kuria for MP Molo, and we had requested the Ministry of Agriculture to be able to give us feedback on the same question. But up to date, we've not received anything from the Ministry of Agriculture, but we have summoned him to the committee next week on Tuesday. So I hope he will come, because we've also had a lot of challenges, because whenever we invite him to come to the committee, he normally does not appear, and he has been quite busy. So I would also want the House to help us also make sure that he is there, so that he can be able to answer some of these questions. But I will also want to mention one or two things on the same matter, because it's a very important matter, and I think, as a honourable member had said, Ototsi, this touches so many Kenyans, because we have a number of MPs here who represent people who use fertilizer, and also we need the fertilizer for purposes of maize, and maize is a staple food in this country, which I believe when you don't have enough maize, or we don't get enough food in this country, it's going to be very expensive for the government or for our people, because of tax that we'll have to import, or rather we'll use to import. So I also want to take this opportunity to also put it clear that if fertilizer was 2,500 shillings last year and the price of maize now is 3,500, you can imagine how much Kenyans are going to buy maize next year if the price of fertilizer remains at 6,000 or almost 7,000 shillings, which I think the government is not treating issues of agriculture to the importance that it is supposed to be treated. And I'll start by bringing up the issue that if you look at the budget, in agriculture we are only getting about 3.1% of the budget goes into agriculture, without them considering that agriculture is the backbone of this economy, of the economy of this country, and Kenya being a signatory of Maputo Declaration, where there's supposed to be a minimum of 10% that's supposed to go to agriculture. So I think that should actually go towards, so that we are able to support the farmers. I want to talk of the addendum that has been brought to our attention, and
what's your point of order, Honorable Elisha?
Mr. Speaker, I think the chairman of agriculture is going round and round and round. It should be more pragmatic and tell the country that the prices of fertilizer went up when the deputy president was a minister of agriculture, and he himself imported fertilizer to this country. He must be more serious. He cannot be going around without explaining the historical position, why the price of fertilizer has been...
Honorable Elisha. Now, I think this is exactly the same thing we were saying, that the unfortunate bit is when you politicize an extremely important issue for the farmers and for the citizens. Now, I do not know really whether the chair...
I have not finished. Thank you.
Have been interested in
Thank
saying
you, Honourable Speaker. But like I said earlier, Honourable Speaker, let us treat this thing of fertilizer.
What is your point of order, Honorable? Indeed, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I was just trying to catch your eye because I've seen majority of the people who have contributed are largely the large-scale farmers. But I represent here majority of small-scale farmers, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say...
How does that become a point of order? Because you see, any point of order is when something is out of order. So are you suggesting that by not being given an opportunity it's out of order? I don't think so.
Mr. Speaker, I thought it's an opportunity for me to contribute.
But then do it in half a minute.
Okay.
So that I go back to... Because I would have actually ruled you out of order.
Okay.
But just half a minute.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, in our language we say that wealth is what remains after you are fed. In trying to paraphrase the Kikuyu saying, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, food comes from agriculture and from our farms. And the prices currently of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, from where I come from and across the entire country of Kenya, is unaffordable to many, especially small-scale farmers. And Mr. Speaker, this percolates even further. The current scenario of our country is that we import more than 200 billion worth of food, Mr. Speaker.
Your half a minute is gone. Thank you. So, no more point of orders. I realize it's actually point of arguments and point of contributions. So let's leave it. Honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, let us allow the chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me proceed from there. Thank you very much. Like I was actually...
Let's hear what the chair has to say first.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also wanted to add to it that we had requested and we had talked to the ministry, and the information we had is that we had requested for about 15 billion to be able to sort out the issue of subsidized fertilizer in this country, especially this time when fertilizer prices are very high. And the cabinet has not given a feedback, which we should expect that they should move very fast. But what the committee did, and I want to applaud the members, my members in the Committee of Agriculture, is that we were able to do the supplementary and make some adjustments where we put in 1.4 billion to be able to subsidize fertilizer, so that as we await cabinet's decision. So what we want is that
Honorable Pukose. I'm not going to allow you.
Please protect me, Honorable Speaker, so that I can be able to proceed.
Order, Honorable Chair. Honorable Pukose. Honorable Pukose. I can confirm to you that I'm not going to allow you. So don't waste your time, because you cannot be unruly in the House and expect me to listen to you. So I'm not going to listen to you. Proceed, Honorable Chair. I'm not out of order. Proceed, Chair. Have you finished?
Thank you. Please. I'm normally very patient when people are talking. Please, I would request the House, please. Now, like I said, like I've just said, that we in the committee we were able to put 1.4 billion to be able to subsidize fertilizer for farmers as we await for cabinet for cabinet to make decisions, because we had requested for 15 billion. So what I was saying in short is that there is a deadline.
Honorable Gikaria. Just a minute.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what I wanted to do, and I think that is what exactly
what is out of order?
The Chair of Agriculture said. Honorable Speaker, this is not the time of asking questions. This is the time of the committee putting money either in the supplementary and in the budget itself, so that we can be able to address some of these issues. And I am happy that the Chair of Agriculture has said that in the supplementary they have put 1.4 billion, which this House should be here in our numbers to try and support what the Chair and his committee has done.
So that
is the only way we can be able to, Honorable Speaker,
that is what
to
I'm
address
saying.
some of these
Honorable
issues.
members,
thank you.
You are rising here saying that there is something which is out of order, but actually what you are doing is basically contributing. Order, Honorable Pukose. I have just told you that I'm not going to give you. So don't bother. You know, there is something that you cannot do, Honorable Pukose. You cannot bully the Speaker. You have no capacity. So this is an issue. You have had your time to contribute. Allow other members and the Chair to respond. And don't, Honorable Pukose, of course I'm not going to remove you from the House But I might ask you to relocate so that you do not interfere with my concentration. Do you want me to try it, Honorable Pukose? Do you want me? Did I hear you saying that I cannot? You know, I can try it with you because it has never been done in the House. I'm going to ask you to go and sit very far from the Speaker, and I don't think you are going to have any power to reject. But so, please, Honorable Pukose, you have had your opportunity, you have spoken. Let us allow the chair, and the chair was bringing out, this is an issue that we need to resolve. Now, if we start politicizing or heckling each other, it does not help. So the chair, please, can you tell us this? When is it that you are going to respond to the statement? That's a very critical thing. You have brought many issues, yes, including the budget matters, which is fine. But eventually, please say when you are able to respond, because you have said the CS is going to be before you on Tuesday. Yes. Are you able, therefore, to table the report, or to respond to that statement on Thursday next week? Yes. That is very good. No, so we have achieved something.
Yes. So I just wanted to add that about the budget. What the committee did about the supplementary is that we were able to put in 1.4 billion in term for the fertilizer subsidy as we await for cabinet. So what I'm putting it clearly is that we have received an addendum from Treasury, and I think we are going to reject it so that we are able to support farmers. And I'll request members, especially members who represent people who are farmers, please be with us so that we make sure that we pass what is going to support our farmers. Okay. Thank you very much, and may God bless.
All right, I think that is a matter that is resolved. So please, we can, and I took quite some time, honorable members. I gave quite a number of you an opportunity to speak because I realize this is, of course, something which is very critical to the economy of the country. So let's go to the next order.
Order number 8, the Public Debt Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2020, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, as is usual, whenever we get to resumption of a debate, we always look out for members who had contributed at that balance of minutes. This particular, the Honorable Fabian Muli was on the floor. He had a balance of 8 minutes. Should he be willing to proceed with it, I would be happy to give him the opportunity. Is he in the House? Doesn't seem so. So then we go to the members who have not contributed and would wish to contribute. Honorable Makali Mulu. Yes, Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Which chairman now?
Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by appreciating Honorable Sako Bunyasi for this important bill, the bill on Public Debt Management Authority. Mr. Speaker, you must have realized that all of this week there has been a serious national conversation on issues relating to public debt. And this shows how important public debt is important to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, just as an introductory remark, we must realize that the reason why we have public debt in any country,
order member for Edebes,
is because, Honorable Speaker,
you cannot, please, can you please
people are
quietly take your leave?
Spending.
Proceed. You are all interfering with the free flow of, please, members, let's give each other opportunity.
I thought, Mr. Speaker, you had given people enough time to score their burger points. Why are they harassing serious business like this?
Proceed, the Honorable Dr. Mulu.
So, Honorable Speaker, I was saying the reason why countries have to report on public debt is because every year as we plan for our expenditure, as we plan for our programs and projects, Honorable Speaker, you find countries, Honorable Speaker, would always spend more than they are collecting from their own resources through taxation. And Honorable Speaker, over time, so long as you spend more than you collect, and if you come to a personal level, so long as you spend more than your income, obvious that a deficit must be met through borrowing. And that's why you see over time, this country has accumulated public debt to the tune of about 8.2 trillion, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, the reason why this bill becomes very important is because we are almost at a level where we are eating over 70% of our GDP being the GDP public debt ratio. What that means, Honorable Speaker, is that there is need then to think about how do you continue managing public debt. And I think that's what this bill addresses. This bill, Honorable Speaker, was published in around 2020. It has taken a lot of time before it lands through this House for debate. So one must now appreciate the fact that now we have the opportunity to debate this bill, Honorable Speaker. This bill, Honorable Speaker, comes up with what we call an institutional framework on how to manage public debt. And why it is very important, Honorable Speaker, because one of the questions we have been asking ourselves over time is how much is our public debt as a country? You have seen this week, Honorable Speaker, where some are saying it's 11 trillion, others are saying it is 8.2 trillion, others are saying when you add public pending bills, it's about 9.something trillion. And why is this happening? It is happening because we don't have a one-stop kind of shop where you can get these figures and get these figures which, with authority, that the person who will be issuing these figures is somebody who has all the data we require and can actually justify the figures. And that's why I'm saying this bill becomes very important. In terms of measuring public debt, Honorable Speaker, you realize that the conventional way of reporting on public debt is you leave out things to do with guaranteed debt, and you leave out issues to do with the pending bills. Honorable Speaker, the reason why you leave this out is because guaranteed debt is debt which is owed by parastatals and other institutions which are government institutions, but not directly through the Treasury. And what that means is the government comes in through Treasury just to guarantee and say that in case this money is not repaid, then, Honorable Speaker, the government can come on board and make that payment. The question is, Honorable Speaker, you know, Honorable Speaker, it means we'll have taken that responsibility to pay. So, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to measuring public debt, that's why we see we leave out assuming the concerned bodies will be able to pay on their own. We also don't include pending bills when we are reporting on public debt in a conventional way, Honorable Speaker, because of the same reason. But the truth of the matter is these are obligations which, in case anything goes wrong, the government will have to pay. So, Mr. Speaker, if we had such an authority in place, you'll be able to say how much is public debt as reported in our books, how much is guaranteed debt as reported through those other organizations, and how much is pending bills, so that at the end of the day, we have a totality of how much the government should be paying. And to me, I see this authority being very important, Honorable Speaker, because they will be able to tell Kenyans at any point in time, this is how much we are owed as Kenyans. This is how much we are paying in terms of principal. This is how much we are paying in terms of interest. This is how much we are expected to pay over time. And even be able to tell Kenyans, this is the repayment period for this loan. And say, even when you finish paying, then this will be the totality in terms of how much was paid in principal and how much was paid in interest. Mr. Speaker, you know we had a very interesting debate in this House when we are raising the ceiling to 9 trillion. And the debate, Mr. Speaker, was allow us a room of 9 trillion so that within that room, Honorable Speaker, we can reorganize we can actually restructure our loans so that we have more of concessional loans as opposed to commercial loans. And with that understanding, Honorable Speaker, we went ahead and allowed Treasury to have the 9 trillion ceiling. Whether we achieved that objective of reorganizing our loans in terms of commercial and concessional is a question for another day, not today. The other matter which is critical, Honorable Speaker, and which I think this authority will have to address, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of how the debt is applied. You know, Honorable Speaker, every day we are talking about public debt. But has any Kenyan taken time to map the programs and projects in this country where this debt is being applied, Honorable Speaker. And the issue is, could we be experiencing skewness in terms of application of this debt? Because when it comes to repayment of the debt, Honorable Speaker, every Kenya is a key player in repaying of those debts. In terms of they will be taxed. So even as you complain about this issue, Honorable Speaker, it will be important that this authority now, what I'm having in mind, once we approve this bill, Honorable Speaker, we'll have an authority which, Honorable Speaker, can say, for the money we have borrowed over the last 5 years, these are the projects and this is where they are located in Kenya. On those basis, Honorable Speaker, we can discuss effectively issues of equity. Whether every area of Kenya is benefiting from these loans because we will all pay the loans. The other important issue, Honorable Speaker, which this authority, I hope will be able to address, is the issue of whether we are getting value for money. Honorable Speaker, the law demands, if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, Honorable Speaker, it says, whatever money you borrow in this country, it must first of all get to the consolidated fund in Kenya, and from there you disperse. Of late, Honorable Speaker, we have heard of loans where we sign the papers, and what we see is either loan in materials coming into Kenya, things are done outside there. What that means, Honorable Speaker, is as a country, we don't have a total control over this loan. With this bill passing, Honorable Speaker, we'll have an authority which ensures that all the money borrowed, first of all, gets to our consolidated fund for purposes of audit at the right time. And then you can disperse the loan from that fund. At the end of the day, Kenyans will be getting value for money. Last but not least, because of time, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of evaluation of the programs we are going to fund. We'll have an authority which, from a technical perspective, can conduct proper appraisal of projects, can conduct feasibility studies of those projects, and see whether these projects will be able to repay themselves over time. Because, Honorable Speaker, the issue of intergenerational equity when we are borrowing is very important. We should make sure that if we borrow for 20 years, by the time we reach the 20th year, Kenyans have started benefiting from such programs which have been implemented, and in that case, then the future generations will not be overburdened repaying loans which were not able to generate any income for the country. So we'll be growing our national cake, and the income coming from that growth, then we'll reduce loan payment, and at the end of the day, we'll have sustainable loans which to some extent are self-servicing. And
very well. So, in the order, again, I don't know why Ole Sankok is always top on the list, but would you mind being brief this morning?
I cannot be brief, Honorable Speaker, because there is time allocated to everybody. But I'll finish before that time elapses, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, don't get worried when I'm always on top of the list, because I
have no reason to get worried at all.
I come before you, Honorable Speaker.
So I want you to contribute now. You're actually spending a minute of your own
and
time.
I leave after you, Honorable Speaker, so that I earn from my sweat.
Maybe I think I might actually, so that you can know.
Honorable Speaker,
I might actually have to give someone else for the time being as you reorganize yourself.
No.
So proceed then.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The Public Debt Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2020, is very important and is in this House in the right time, Honorable Speaker. And I hope all members in this House, irrespective of the political inclination that they may have, will support this bill, because this debt burden in this country is burdening Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. You can't imagine that a child who will be born today or a debt of 136,000, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, is unfortunate that we will have to pay all this debt, all of us, irrespective whether the money borrowed was used properly or was used wrongly, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, is unfortunate because those who are in the management in government, Honorable Speaker, who are supposed to implement projects that will give us value for our money, Honorable Speaker, are busy implementing projects that will not give us returns on investment, Honorable Speaker, yet we will pay these loans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure this authority will look and to priorities, Honorable Speaker. Because for me, I believe where we went wrong and why we are not able to service our debt, Honorable Speaker, is because we decided to invest on investments that use capital, Honorable Speaker, what we call capital intensive investments, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you invest in capital intensive investment, it is because you have the luxury of time, you have the luxury of resources. We have resources that you can wait, Honorable Speaker, for them to give you returns on investment because you are not in a hurry, because you are not poor, Honorable Speaker. But this country is a poor country, is a developing country. It needs to invest on labor intensive infrastructure and investment, Honorable Speaker, so that we get returns on our investment as quick as possible, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you are rich, you let your money do the work for you. If you are poor, you let your muscles do the work for you. In this case, in our country set up, Honorable Speaker, we will allow the unemployed youth, millions of them, to work for us because at the moment we are not a developed country. We are still struggling as a country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, a case in point is where we have invested on the expressway, Honorable Speaker. Spending 80 billion on an expressway. And this expressway will assist 1% of Kenyan citizens who are traveling to JKIA, Honorable Speaker. If we will have taken the 80 billion to invest on labor-intensive investment like affordable housing, Honorable Speaker, we will be able to have constructed 80,000 units of 2-bedroom each in strategic locations of our cities, Honorable Speaker, because the government have land in prime areas, Honorable Speaker. And at the end of the day, we will be able to employ more people because each unit will require a carpenter, a plumber, a mason, 5 young men, Honorable Speaker. 5 times 80,000 will have employed 400,000 young men to do the work for us, Honorable Speaker. But the expressway, which we have invested 80 billion, is using machineries. It is capital intensive. It have only been able to employ 3,000 people, Honorable Speaker. If we have invested in that labor intensive investment of affordable housing, Honorable Speaker, which is one of the big 4 agenda of our president, then we will have, the government will be charging rent, meaning it will have another source of income rather than increasing taxes on food, increasing taxes on fuel, and increasing taxes, Honorable Speaker, on fertilizer, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, so as a country and this authority will have to look into our economic models. Which one will work? Is it the trickle-down economic model or the bottom-up economic model? Because that is the only way we can be able to manage our debt, Honorable Speaker, and be able to service our debt. If you invest on labor-intensive investment, which is in the bottom-up economic model, then you'll be able to even broaden the tax base. You'll be able to bring so many people on board who are willing to pay taxes, Honorable Speaker, because they have the economic source of income, Honorable Speaker. The moment you have 1 million extra taxpayers, it means you have more revenue, which means you can be able to service your loan. But in the trickle-down economic model, where we invest in a few big corporates like KQ, Honorable Speaker, thinking that they will pay taxes, and they end up being folder grounds for corruption and end up declaring nil in returns, meaning they will not even pay taxes, Honorable Speaker, we will not be able to repay our loans, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, this bill is here in this House at the right time, and we all support because, Honorable Speaker, our debt, the burden is too huge for Kenyans. Kenyans are now crying, #reduce food prices. Why are they crying? Because of the burden of the debt that we have, Honorable Speaker, that we have to service to an extent that we don't have money left to subsidize fertilizers to be able to cushion the poor and vulnerable in our country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, therefore, we support this bill, and we will like the authority, the Public Debt Management Authority, to be able to advise the government on what type of investment it will carry, not only to advise them on the limit of borrowing, but also advise on types of investment, model of economic model, so that we can be able to have more people paying taxes, and more money will be available for repaying taxes. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Mboni Mwalika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words on this bill. Speaker, public debt is not a bad thing. So long as the debt is being utilized in productive sectors of the economy, which have high economic impact, and a country can be able to pay. No country can be able to achieve meaningful development without borrowing. According to World Bank report on status of the world debts in 2021, the country with the highest debt is Japan, with the 257% debt as a ratio of GDP. In Africa, Sudan reads with the 210% of GDP, which is the highest in Africa. Kenya, we are at 70. And yet, we are really complaining. But the whole thing is how the debt is being used. And can the country be able to pay the debts? Debt is a function of expenditure and revenue. When a country cannot be able to collect more expenditures and it has huge expenditure, then we have debt. Currently, this country is servicing debt at almost 900 billion, which is a huge chunk of money which you are collecting. Because we are collecting around 1.6 and we are paying around 9 billion, leaving us with only 700 billion, which 600 billion is used in paying salaries and other recurrent expenditures. Honorable Speaker, this House cannot run away from the debt issues in the country because
approval should be with Parliament, just like all other miscellaneous regulations. Subsidiary law should come to both houses of Parliament. Remember that relationship between landlords and tenants are highly regulated or dealt with at the local level. There is a role played by the county governments insofar as this relationship is concerned, collection of taxes, things to do with licensing of these properties, and designation of where is residential and where is a business premise. All this should be involve county government. The best way to involve county government is to involve the Senate. Is the role of the Senate insofar as ensuring that the role of the cabinet secretary is checked by Parliament. So it shouldn't be just National Assembly, should be Parliament itself, both houses of Parliament. Madam Speaker, I beg to second.
Honourable Senators, I now propose the question that the Landlord and Tenant Bill, National Assembly Bills number 3 of 2021, be now read a second time. Senator Olekina Ledama.
Madam Speaker, I thank you. Let me begin by saying that I rise to support the Landlord and Tenancy Bill 2021, a National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2021, and state clearly that it is quite timely But as I read through the bill, I find that there are very, very important things that have been omitted. I have skimmed very fast through the bill, and I've looked at the way the bill has been drafted, and it is mostly to protect landlords. You know, in most cases, Madam Speaker, in all developed countries, there are legislations which are developed to ensure that even the tenants themselves understand their rights. In this bill, Madam Speaker, the tenants' rights are not clearly defined. One of the things which I find a bit contradictory in the bill, which I'd like to point out directly, begins with the issues of the tenancy agreement. It states very clearly, if you look at section 17, it says that these are the general provisions relating to the tenancies. It says that the rent payable for any premises shall be determined by mutual agreement of the parties to a tenancy agreement. Then the second clause contradicts the first statement, where it says, 17.2, it says, where an agreement cannot be reached by the parties at any time during the tenancy, the tribunal, on reference to either of the parties, shall determine the rent payable for the premise based on comparable or similar lettings. Madam Speaker, my concern with that second clause is that if the rent payable is supposed to be of mutual agreement, where do we then say, no, if we cannot agree on the rent payable, we go to a tribunal for the tribunal to tell us? That is actually saying that we have such a big shortage of properties that a tenant can be able to rent in this country, that they have to rent that. So because they are not in agreement, they will now force the owner, the landlord, to be able to go to the tribunal for the tribunal to determine how much should be paid. I find that a bit contradictory. And I would actually request the majority leader who has moved this bill to consider removing that clause or amending that clause to make it very simple. That where there is a mutual agreement, this is a covenant. It is between two parties. You don't want to antagonize any of the parties by bringing a provision that says, now, a third party who has got no interest in that building. Remember, I spent a lot of money to construct that building. I decided that I'm going to pay X amount of rent, to charge X amount of rent. If you are the tenant and are looking to come and stay in my building, you should come to my building, we agree together on how much should be paid, but not refer back to the tribunal for the tribunal to determine and say, we'll take a sample of the area and force you, the landlord, who instead of putting a tile that cost 300 shillings per square meter, you put one that cost about 10,000 shillings per square meter, but you are now forced to pay or to charge what the neighbor who only use the tiles for 300 shillings is charging. So I don't think that is fair to either the landlord or the tenant. So I would be seeking an amendment, and I hope that the majority leader can look into that and consider making those changes. Number two, Madam Speaker, if you look at section 18 of the bill, it states as follows. A landlord shall not increase the rent payable by the tenant or rented premises unless the landlord gives the tenant at least 90 days written notice of the intention to do so. We go back to the initial covenant. If you want to rent my premise, we agree that it's for a period of time, 3 years, and within those 3 years, I'm going to charge you X amount of shillings. So I've got no business increasing that rent within the first 3 years, Madam Speaker. Those 3 years, it will be sealed. So if I intend to renew the lease agreement, then at that point of time, we can now discuss whether I'm going to increase the rent or reduce the rent. So, Madam Speaker, I think this section 18 also needs to be amended, because it says, number two, if you read 18.2, it further continues and says, the notice to be given under subsection 1 shall be in the prescribed form and shall specify the landlord intention to increase the rent and the amount of the new rent. That will only be necessary if the covenant period or the time that you've agreed that I'm going to reside in that property has lapsed. But in the event that it's within the period of the covenant, it is not necessary. So I don't think we should over-legislate or make it difficult or create room for landlords to find ways to be able to exploit tenants. You know, with the kind of lifestyle, or rather the living conditions in this country now, where things are very expensive, people, middle class, or anyone, even us as legislators who are working, you would not get an increase in your salary. So if you say, I'm going to be staying here for 3 years, I have a contract with my company for 3 years, this is how much I should pay, and it will be able to help me survive, that should be the case. So that Section 18 also needs to be relooked. In fact, if you look at the entire Part 4 does not take into consideration the interests of a tenant. It only looks at the interest of the landlords. Let me proceed further, Madam Speaker, and reiterate on one other very important issue relating to the tenancy agreement. Every time there is a tenancy agreement, there is always a deposit which is paid. This deposit, most landlords in this country, look forward to getting this deposit so that they can go and spend on their own issues. I think it is now time for us, and it behooves us as legislators, to be able to look at what happens around the world in terms of protecting that deposit. In countries like the US, where I lived for so many years, there is normally laws that governs the tenancy deposit. And there are two areas where you're supposed to protect that tenancy deposit. One, it can either be a custodial or an interest-based tenancy deposit security, where the landlord is supposed to protect that deposit in a government-backed deposit scheme, where if it's a government-backed deposit scheme, if you decide to make it custodial, they earn the interest, it pays them to be able to protect that deposit. If it is an insured scheme, then the agreement between the tenant and the landlord must clearly specify how that interest is going to be utilized or how it's going to be shared. Is it going to be 100% taken by the landlord, that money does not belong to him or her? Or is it going to be taken by the tenant who has decided to put that money aside so that it can protect in the event that there is something needs to be fixed in that house? Madam Speaker, I would have also hoped that this tenancy agreement would either think of a situation where it creates an escrow account. I know in terms of escrow, mostly it relates to mortgage schemes, but in this particular one, where in this country, KRA now requires a certain amount of money to be paid by the landlord as the tenancy income in taxes. So I think it will be important for us to amend this legislation and factor in all those issues of the escrow. Because if it was a tenancy agreement and you don't have to pay any taxes to KRA, then the escrow issue would not come into play. But today, I'm aware that even in our own offices, Senate offices, which are spread across the country, KRA requires us to withhold 15% taxes on the rent that we pay to our landlords. In the event that that money is withheld, KRA assumes that everybody is a tax agent. So long as you're collecting any money, you automatically becomes a tax agent, whether you have signed an agreement with KRA or not. So I think it is time for us now, when we are drafting legislation, to consider taking into consideration all these issues that will come in to dictate how the tenancy agreement should be run. So I would be seeking either the majority leader or the committee stage amendment, or if they don't, then I'll be bringing the amendments. One, to define how the tenancy deposit will be handled during the period of the deposit, whether it will be a custodial account, or rather the government protected scheme, or whether it will be an insured account. And the tenants needs to know their rights. They need to be able to understand their rights. There's one thing that makes me happy here, and I think all landlords ought to be alive to this fact that you cannot just evict a Kenyan living in your property without the consent of the tribunal. In the event that that tenant has not paid rent, maybe he has not paid for 1 month, or has got a tendency of delaying in paying rent, then you need to report that person to the tribunal. That is an issue that has been brought up by this bill. Then you get a consent from the tribunal for you to be able to evict that person. It is also very important to note that in this bill, it talks about a duration where if the eviction is not carried out within a stipulated period of time, I think it is 60 days, then it lapses. That person continues staying in that house. It can be extended if the landlord goes back to the tribunal and seek for an extension. But these are issues that the tenants and the landlords must remember, must be alive to. And I would really request that as part of the tenancy agreement, the piece of legislation that deals with this, like this, the landlord and tenancy, if it becomes an act, should be attached to the tenancy agreement, so that maybe it should be cited in the terms and conditions for rental, so that the tenant and the landlord are well aware of their rights. Madam Speaker, the other issue that I'd like to communicate on this matter has to do with Section 30. This is also another issue of subletting. The law, as it's proposed, states as follows. A tenant may, with the consent of the landlord, assign premises to another person. It further continues and says, a tenant may give the landlord notice to terminate within 30 days after the date of the request made under subsection 1, if the tenant requests of the landlord to consent to an assignment of the premises and the landlord refuses to consent. Madam Speaker, these are things that we need not to over-legislate. These are things which need to be clearly defined during the time of signing the agreement. The agreement should be very clear that in my premise as a landlord, I do not agree, I do not approve any subletting. Then you as a tenant have a right to say, since you do not want me to sublet, then I'm not interested in renting your property. I think when you now give room in Section 30, Madam Speaker, when you give room in Section 30 to say that you now go and seek approval from the landlord, and if he refuses, then you can then choose to leave the property, then you will be negating all the other terms and conditions that you agreed upon. So I think to protect both the landlord and the tenant, the agreements must be clear from the onset that in this property, there's no subletting allowed. In this property, you can sublet, just notify us, but the terms and conditions continue being the same as the initial tenancy agreement. Madam Speaker, to conclude this, let me reiterate on the two issues that I raised. One has to do with the issue of how you secure the deposits. There are properties here and where tenants are required to pay about 6 months deposit. 3 months, about 6 months deposit before they can occupy the premises. It could be about 6 million shillings. That is a lot of money. If that money is not protected, either one to be safeguarded in either a custodial or an interest-bearing account, then there are chances that by the time when the tenancy agreement comes to an end, there'll be a big Mickey Mouse sort of like competition between the landlord and the tenant when the tenant wants to leave and get their deposit. We know, we've heard of so many stories where tenants do not get their deposit, or landlords make it very difficult to release the deposit paid by the tenants. I think the tribunal, instead of the tribunal just being, in every bill you give them so much power, I think the powers that you should give them is the powers to be able to determine whether the premises or whether the tenants knew the terms and conditions of them leasing the house. or leasing a property. Number two, to finalize, it is the issue of the rights of tenants. Tenants need to know that they can live anywhere they choose to live in this country, and that when they are in that house, the period that they have occupied that period, since they're paying for them to be in that house, it is assumed they should enjoy all the rights that any Kenyans can enjoy in their own private place. This business of landlords entering into the premises as they choose must also come to an end. They can only do that if they notify, and maybe this is an amendment we should put in, if they notify the tribunal that there is a challenge with that tenant and they seek approval for them to be able to enter the premises. The premises ceases to become 100% owned by the tenant, by the landlord, because there's a person who lives there who is paying for it. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, I fully support, and I hope that the majority leader who moved this bill has taken note of the areas of concerns, and they can be able to bring in some amendments to make it very clear. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cherargei Samson Kiprotich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. This is a very important bill, the National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2021, the Landlord and Tenant Bill. I think some of us who own property or rentals, and also Kenyans who live on our property, we need the protection of the law. And I hope as the majority leader works very hard, Madam Speaker, to ensure that there is expeditious handling of the National Assembly bills that originate from there, I wish the same could be replicated at the National Assembly whenever we have bills that originate from the Senate. And that has been our contention since we moved to court the other time. So I really want and hope that the majority leader will ensure also the way we are prioritizing and giving adequate and really high-level wisdom like of Senator Ledama on the matters that before the House. And then the National Assembly also must give adequate attention to our bill so that we complement each other. I think, Madam Speaker, a few comments about this. A straightforward bill. These are things that has been done in terms of tenancy, tenants and landlords. It's just we are establishing a legal framework that will guide and ensure that there is protection of the law. Because most of the people who own rental properties, residential homes, and many other places, and now we have ownership of sectional properties where their sharing of clubs, swimming pools, stairs, or there's open spaces within apartments in the city and other towns within the country, Madam Speaker. This just guides and gives appropriate, and most of this should be done in good faith, because at the end of the day, if you are the landlord and there is a tenant, then the engagement of tenancy agreement should always be done in good faith. Madam Speaker, there is the issue of rent increment and the issue of reduction of rent increment. I think this became a challenge, Madam Speaker, especially during the COVID period. And we saw a number of Kenyans lose their jobs, and some of them could not sustain to pay rent. And some of the unscrupulous landlords went ahead to increase rent. It is good now that the law has provided that at least 90 days, or 90 days, that is around 3 months, that when a landlord has an intention of increasing residential property and other forms of property, that you give adequate notice. And I think that is very important, because one interesting thing in this country is that, and I saw it somewhere with the issue of increase in food prices, is that people, the income will remain constant, be it salary, but the expenses will keep going up. So you can imagine if somebody was paying 10,000 shillings for a property or a residential home or where they live, and there may be salaries around 30,000. But now that there is caveat or an opportunity of 33 months, Madam Speaker, it can give a new opportunity to that person to relocate so that they can look for a better housing, a better place where they can afford. So I think this stopgap measure is very important, because sometimes when landlords want to frustrate you, they can wake up one day, especially landlords in our small towns, in the villages, they wake up one day and say your house is no longer 1,500. We need you now to pay 2,500. You can imagine the horror that such a family needs to adjust with hard economic times. And even the reduction, we saw a number of landlords, Madam Speaker, decrease those of goodwill, especially during the pandemic across the world, especially in Kenya. And I think some of the landlords, because of the challenges that some of them even gave rent-free months, others ensured, Madam Speaker, that there was a decrease, and many other factors that contributed, especially during the pandemic. And Madam Speaker, I think it is very important that, and I like the way the wording is, a landlord shall decrease the rent charged to, and that is clause 21, the tenant, if the landlord ceases to provide any prescribed service with respect to the tenant's occupants of the rental premises. You know, Madam Speaker, landlords are very good people. When you are moving to their houses, they will tell you, we will be now mowing your grass, we will be working on the cutting, ensuring they take care of weeding their flowers, ensuring that they wash your cabros. They will ensure that we provide you security, the watchman at the gate will be collecting garbage. But after some time, when they are now comfortable, you have taken your money, you have paid deposit, you have paid your maybe rent for maybe 2-3 months. But I'm Speaker, the landlord disappears. So it becomes a challenge. And I think it is very important, because maybe even the payment of electricity bills and water. So sometimes before you know it, when you are misled, in short, there was a misrepresentation, because the landlord was excited and wanted you to rent their property, and then they promise you heaven, but they can't deliver by saying, we'll cut your grass, we'll ensure the trimming of the fence, weeding of flowers, cleaning maybe of the cabros, providing security services, payment of electricity bills and water bills that will be factored. So when you are paying your rent, you know the service that will be provided. Apart from the rental, there will be other additional services that will be provided. So I think, and also, Madam Speaker, when you move in, they can say they want to come and paint your house. Maybe by the time you move in, because maybe agency, you move to the property, and they tell you maybe in 1 month time, I will send a painter to come or fix a few fixtures within the within the house, but they have not done it. And I think it is very important that that one has been noted. That is clause 21. But as Speaker of the powers and appointment of tribunal, I think those are procedural issues, and there is nothing much I can add. And even the powers that tribunal has, they have always had, and this has assisted, and especially in providing for litigation. Madam Speaker, another clause 27, a landlord may by notice terminate tenancy if the landlord in good faith requires possession of premises for occupation. And I think the date for termination, if the landlord, the spouse of the landlord, a child or parent of the landlord, which is okay, the date shall be at least 60 days. I think it would remain at 90 days, 3 months, so that you don't wake up, Madam Speaker, and you know the inconvenience of moving to a new house. Maybe where you live and where you work, there was proximity. But now, if you give only 2 months notice, I think it is the better, Majority Leader, let's maintain at 90 days or 3 months, so that, Madam Speaker, it is also convenient. You can imagine landlord wants the house maybe for the child of the spouse, which is okay. But I think the timeline, Madam Speaker, should be 90 days. I think 3 months is more than sufficient to allow even you, maybe where you live, and where you need to relocate your children, the proximity to school, maybe to other public facilities, to your workplace was very convenient. But you will need, Madam Speaker, an adequate time, so that even if you have to move your children to another school, or even if you know, it was more proximate to the church, Madam Speaker, or a mosque. And you know, if you go far from the mosque or the church, your prayers might take long to reach heaven. So you will need to relocate, Madam Speaker, to where your spiritual nourishment, access to utilities like supermarkets and many other schools, and the mosque or the church, Madam Speaker. Clause 28, a landlord may give notice of termination of tenancy if requires possession of the premises in order to demolish and I think this has been the biggest problem, Madam Speaker. We have found, and that is where creation of infrastructure, Madam Speaker, which are called, we have forest evictees, we have internally displaced people, but nowadays the biggest menace in this republic, Madam Speaker, especially in this city, is what we call infrastructural evictees, where either they want to demolish the premises that you are using or residential you are using to expand the roads. But how they do it, Madam Speaker, it is unfortunate. You wake up one day, especially in our cities, houses have been demolished, homes have been demolished without a due regard of the law. And I think that is where the growth of infrastructural evictees, in fact, the threat to this country, Madam Speaker, is no longer the forest evictees or even political or IDPs, Madam Speaker. The biggest menace in this country is infrastructural evictees. And I think it is very important that, Madam Speaker, it is unfair. When you wake up one day, you find people, it is good to build roads. It is good to build public utilities. It is very important to build hospitals. But also you must be fair and have due regard to the law. And therefore, Madam Speaker, at least 120 days, which is, I think 4 months is sufficient. So that unless somebody has grabbed the land and there is an issue that they can demolish at night, I think as a country, Madam Speaker, we need to move away from this. And I think 120 or 4 months is very important so that we prevent the creation of infrastructural evictees. You remember during COVID, there were people that were being evicted in Ruai, among other areas, even outside the city, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I really want another aspect that has become a challenge, especially to hustlers, is, Madam Speaker, is the payment of goodwill payment. I don't know where that thing emanated from, especially in business premises. You go to Kisumu town, you go to Kisumu city, it's not a town. You go to Eldoret city, Nairobi, and many other big towns. People are paying goodwill payments, Madam Speaker. Oh, yes, okay. So, Madam Speaker, so what we are saying is that you can find somebody, a young person, maybe have taken money, maybe youth fund. You want to rent somewhere in around the city. Maybe the rent for that small space within the city or CBD is maybe 50,000 or 40,000. But the person who is inside there tells you, pay me goodwill of 2 million. I think this is what the majority leader needs to look at, because most young people cannot do business because of only one issue, what we call goodwill payment. And it is an issue that must be addressed once and for all, because I know many people who are business people, Madam Speaker, and mostly young people. I don't know where this culture of payment of goodwill came from. It is in millions, Madam Speaker. I had a friend who wanted to get a property, to lease a property, not even to buy, lease a property to do business within Eldoret town. And he was being told to pay 6 million. So I was wondering, how can 6 million, and these are startups, Madam Speaker, these are startups, businesses that we need to do. So the issue of, I think this will assist us in stopping unorganized or illegal demolitions, violation of many other property, Madam Speaker, and many others. Madam Speaker, another fourth point, I think, of course, I agree with clause 29. Madam Speaker, you know, the estates, when you go to some of these estates in Nairobi, Madam Speaker, somebody has rented a house for residents. Before you know it, it is a club. People are clubbing there, Madam Speaker. People are doing prayers. People cannot sleep. I'm not saying prayers are bad, but you are living in a residential home. Before you know it, there is Kesha. Madam Speaker, before you know it, there is a club. Madam Speaker, before you know it, especially during COVID, Madam Speaker. So I agree that termination on the reasons of maybe illegal. Even, Madam Speaker, there are estates where even drug trafficking, human trafficking is happening. And I think it is important that to have these powers. And I really want for termination notice. Another one is damage. I think it is important. Madam Speaker, when some of the people who own property, and sometimes you rent your property, kidogo kidogo, before you know it, Madam Speaker, You go there, you do your routine check. Of course, there is a right of possession to the tenant that is there. You reach there, your property has been destroyed, toilet appliances have been destroyed. I think those powers are very important, Madam Speaker, and especially when illegal. I think on the issue of criminal elements, be it drug trafficking or using as a bar in a residential area, I think also it's uncomfortable to that. I think those are additional comments that I wanted to make. The fifth point I wanted to make is that assigning and subletting, I think the biggest victims of this such instances there was assignment and subletting, Madam Speaker, is normally municipal houses or county government houses. You find the father was living in that house. The father was living in that house. The grandfather, the father, the son of the son. So some of the properties within municipality, especially within cities, like here in Nairobi, Eldoret, where there used to be municipal houses, you will find there are 5 generations of one family have been living in a public house, Madam Speaker, but they should be the law that guides them, Madam Speaker. And you know, people, even when you go there, they have turned into homes, especially even railways, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hope it is not within the chamber, because it looks like there are people who are playing twisty. Madam Speaker, what I was making the point is it is important for the houses that are owned by county governments, formerly municipal houses. Municipal houses, Madam Speaker, I hope it will not affect the transcription of the answer to appear that they will, but it's outside the chambers. Madam Speaker, I think what is important is that, and you know, when those people are being removed, you can imagine the police, especially the railway houses, many others, Madam Speaker. So it is always, I don't know how we'll handle this, but it is important. Before you know it, Madam Speaker, they have even extended their houses. People who live in railway houses, you go there, there is a railway house, but they have started building a Babati. They have relocated all their clan before they have want to take forceful possession of such property. Finally, Madam Speaker, on the issue of offences, I think we need to be specific. Madam Speaker, I think we need to be specific. Saying forfeiting 1 month rent, I think to be punitive enough, Madam Speaker, is that it is important that offences become specific and become punitive so that it can become deterrent, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the final thing I wanted to make is clause 62. And I hope, I know the argument of National Assembly Majority Leader might say because the Cabinet Secretary is making policy. So they might say National Assembly, but why don't they say Parliament? And I think Majority Leader will need to amend this, that they may notice with the approval, because the issue of ownership of rental houses and many others, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have noted the change on the seat, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that Parliament, and you know most of these issues are managed at the county government's level. Why would the National Assembly having what we call selective amnesia? And they know under Article 93, Parliament is both houses. It is the National Assembly and the Senate. And you know, they want to take us, you know, we went to court because of that simple issues, Majority Leader. Can you handle in Kikao ya wazee with you National Assembly and the Senate? Because we wouldn't want to be fighting here. And for small issues, we should be fighting for serious issues of lowering food prices in the country and looking at serious issues of National Assembly. But I want to assure that the issue of tenancy, landlords, will be handled very well under the Kenya Kwanza government, Mr. Speaker, because most of the people affected by these issues, Mr. Speaker, are normally the hustlers. And we'll be looking at, and I really want to thank the Majority Leader. This law looks very fair to the hustlers, and it looks very good for the hustler nation, and also all Kenyans, Majority Leader. And finally, Mr. Speaker, is to say this, we should process this law, but I request that the Majority Leader, there are so many gray areas, allow us to put input so that we can fine-tune and improve. And I'm happy the Majority Leader today has been in the House and has listened to us very keenly. I know Ledama Olekina has been busy traversing the country, doing campaigns of Kuzimia, but it is good to see him back in the House. Mr. Speaker, because we still need to work and legislate for the betterment of the country and to look forward.
What's it, Senator Ledama?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for my good friend, Senator of Nandi, is it Nandi or which county is it from? Which county? Is it Nandi? To impute improper motive that have been traversing the country campaigning for Azimio ya Kuzimia, when he knows very well that his own team is referred clearly as Kenya Kwisha. Mr. Speaker, you know, this gentleman should restrict himself to debating on issues that relates to the relevance, the landlord and tenancy agreement, but not issues that he does not even have any meat to be able to discuss. This issue, Mr. Speaker, you should find him completely out of order for discussing the issues to do with Kenya Kwisha, thinking that he's talking about Azimio la Umoja.
Senator Cherargei, strict yourself to the order.
Yes, but Mr. Speaker is making it worse. There was no point of order there. What I just meant is that this law is good. Any presidential candidate should tell the country what they will do, because in this city, the biggest problem when you walk around this city, and it looks like Kuzimia, I don't know what is happening, is that most of the people have challenges of tenancy and the issue of property and rentals, Mr. Speaker. So I support with amendments and wish well Senator Ledama. I didn't mean that he has abdicated his duty. I wanted Baba to notice that you are campaigning for him.
Senator Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support this very important bill from the National Assembly, the bill on landlord and tenants. Mr. Speaker, as I was going through the bill, I realized that this bill can help all the citizens, and as we know, majority of Kenyans, and especially those who live within Nairobi, are tenants. And for the landlords, again, this will guide them so that they can be able to treat their tenants well. So I support this bill because the bill, as you can see, proposes the introduction of price control over the rents based on market values. Previously, Mr. Speaker, the landlords have always been, giving the rents the price they wanted, depending, they could even change within no time and without even giving notice. But this bill then will help the tenants because the rent will be based on market values. That then will help the tenants because nothing will be extraordinary or nothing will be out of order. Mr. Speaker, again, I support this bill because it proposes to repeal the Rent Restriction Act and the landlord and tenants. That again is a good suggestion that makes me support the bill because when doing that, then I know the benefits it has. Mr. Speaker, we know that in the past, the many tenants in Kenya have gone through so many challenges, and especially at this time when people face economical crisis, and even now when we are, preparing for election. Mr. Speaker, yeah, Mr.